Welcome back. With me now from outside the Time Warner Center in New York, where the bomb that was addressed to John Brennan was sent today, happens to be Arizona Senator Jeff Flake. And Senator Flake, you and I have had way too many of these conversations about rhetoric, about tone, about violence. Yeah. You were on the baseball field during the attempted assassination of all of you out there. I had an interview earlier with Senator Cruz. There's a real reluctance among some Republicans to ask the president to take a larger role here. What role should he play in all this?
Well, he has the biggest microphone there is in the world, and I hope that he uses it. The words that he spoke today were good. He just needs to follow through now when it matters, and it will likely matter tonight when he has a rally and when people start chants that, demeaning the press, for example. If he will stand up at that time, then it will really mean something.
Why do you think you've had a hard time getting your colleagues to join you in this condemnation in general? I mean, I would argue you've kind of been a lone voice of sorts, saying, wait a minute, this is getting out of hand. We've got to take a step back.
Well, I don't think anybody wants to be on the other end of Trump criticism. It doesn't, particularly if you're standing for election. In a primary, on a Republican primary in particular, nobody wants to be criticized by the president, and they will be if they stand up to the president. So I think that's been the reluctance. But it's our responsibility as elected officials not to, speak out with every tweet or every statement. But when the president goes far too far, referring to the press as the enemy of the people, or celebrating a politician who assaults a journalist, that's a time that we all need to stand up.
I hear you, and yet it isn't. If he's not going to play this role, then what do you do in a moment like this? Do you just wait for different leaders?
Well, I hope we don't have to do that. I hope that the president will decide this is the time. Now when it matters. You saw Senator McCain in his election, quiet the woman who was ridiculing or denigrating Barack Obama. We need that kind of action today, action that tones down the rhetoric. But that's far from where we are. I just hope that it'll change. And as elected officials, like I said, we don't have as big a microphone as the president, but we can speak up, and we should.
Well, what are some actions you guys can do? I remember after Gabby Giffords was shot, there was an attempt to at least present some bipartisan opportunities. I had somebody actually out here in my audience here who said, you know what, all of Congress should sit alphabetically so that you're not sitting Dem Republican. You're forced to sit next to people, that you may not know or like, but you have to. What could you guys do together? I mean, I'll be honest, watching the Kavanaugh hearings, you guys seem to be as angry and divided at each other sometimes as the actual voters.
I thought during the Kavanaugh hearings that, all the rewards, all the political incentives are wrong. They force us to the extremes. Those who want to express perhaps some humility and they don't know all the answers, that they may, actually go to a hearing and be informed by that hearing about how they might vote. That means you might be criticized from both sides. And so politicians kind of instinctively now just stick with the tribe. Just go to one side or the other, because that way you'll only be criticized by one side. And it just has to stop. We've got to do better. We have too big of problems in this country. We have too many real enemies outside of the country than to invent those here at home among our political opponents.
No, one of the amazing things about today's incidents is how quickly nobody assumed this was international terrorism. Think about how bad things have gotten domestically, that our first instinct wasn't, is this ISIS or Al-Qaeda?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's
So-
right. And I think, I mean, everybody here bears some responsibility to actually be better. You know, the calls for, you know, civility after the election, not before, that isn't right. And for, you know, calls some on the left to heckle politicians on the right if they sit at restaurants or whatever, that's not right either. But the president has the biggest microphone in the world, like I said, and the largest responsibility to set the tone. And we would do a lot better, I think, if we were led in a better direction, and that's the president's responsibility.
Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.